A lot of people work extremely hard so that they can find a time where they finally have freedom in their life. But the reality is, a lot of people that get to that point end up building a fancy golden cage instead of actually having freedom. This happens because as people start to make more money, they start to upgrade their lifestyle as they go to the point where they're not actually getting ahead and creating the freedom that they really needed. They're not saving and building the nest egg that they need to be able to live the lifestyle that they had dreamed of. Instead, they keep slowly upgrading things, making it harder and harder to attain. And then at a certain point, they get to the point where they're driven by the fear of if they leave the job or if they do something different, well, now they've got some expensive mortgage, multiple car payments, and all these other things that are costing them to have an expensive life. I know so many people that have been in this dilemma. They start to make money, they make their life super expensive, and then they end up in a point where if they like lose a client or lose an account or like whatever, they are struggling to stay above water because of how expensive their lifestyles become. And they're in some ways more stressed out than people I know who make a quarter the amount of money as them. I've seen this happen over and over again. And this happens because we end up in a trap. And the trap is we buy toys to soothe the pain, right? It might be toys, you can call it whatever you want. We buy new clothes, new items, something materialistic. Maybe we buy a bigger house or rent something more expensive or go on a more lavish trip or spend money on lavish food, whatever it is. We find ways to soothe the pain of the grind. And in those times, we burn through a lot of that money and we put ourselves in a rough position. And the thing is, they buy the toy, then they need to have the job to pay for it. They work harder, more stress. It's a vicious, vicious cycle and loop, right? Stress, buy more. Then we need to work harder to be able to pay for it. Then we work even harder and harder. Now we're even more stressed. Oh, now what? Now we go on a vacation that's way too expensive, and so on and so on and so on. I've seen this cycle happen over and over again. So the problem is you might just ask, well, why don't you just downsize or why don't you just scale back or whatever? Well, first of all, people get really comfortable in the way that they're living. It's hard for people to go from one lifestyle to another. Once people start to upgrade their lifestyle, it's hard to go back and to switch back. I know this because I've experienced it. I was living in a really nice house in the city, making money, doing all this stuff, and then I sold everything I owned, moved into an RV, and traveled around the US in an RV. It was like I downsized to a minimal level, and I went through that, and then it was hard traveling. It was actually a beautiful experience. I loved it. It gave me a lot of freedom, but it was hard. It was a different type of stress because being on tour, essentially traveling, is difficult. Now, if I had just done that and not traveled as hard, I probably could have sustained it for longer. So I actually did it twice in my life. The second time was way less stressful because I didn't travel as far and try to do as many states and all that stuff. The first time I did it, I did 29 states in like a year. It was wild across the US. So anyway, point is, after that, I did eventually move into a nicer house, but I didn't like go over the top. I kept it simple. And that's the beautiful thing. I was able to keep a life of freedom and find that balance. And I didn't fall into the trap of building the golden cage and making everything so expensive that I have to keep some super high stress job and I have to grind for clients and all that stuff. The problem is most people that get into that trap, they have an identity crisis that's happening. And what that is that they start to have this, if I earn less, I am less feeling. It's kind of an ego trap, but it's also tied into our identity. And there's an alignment issue there, right? If you are tying your happiness and your identity and like who you are into how much money you make, it's a recipe for disaster. Because yes, we do want to make more money and have freedom and all that stuff, but not at the point where it's inextricably tied into our identity. What's more important is like, what kind of person are we? Not how much money do we make. So that's the big thing. it doesn't matter if you're impressing other people or any of that stuff. Like, none of that really matters. That's the ego number. The freedom number is like, how much do I actually need to live free? And what is the lifestyle that I want to live? You have to really get clear on that with yourself. But the thing is, you want to evaluate who you are as a person and what your values truly are at the foundational level. So I actually have a link in the description to my free school community. You can join it completely free. And when you join, you can go into the classroom and there's a thing in there called the Foundation Inspection. So check that out. It's a free PDF and there's a short, couple minute long training on how to use it. And it will help you evaluate your foundation, your core values. Are you aligned with your purpose? Where are you at wealth-wise? And are you on the right trajectory? And how do you align that with your values and purpose? This is the kind of work that you have to do because truth is, yes, we want to make more money. We want to achieve freedom. We want to work hard and live the life that we want to live, but we also want that to be in alignment with our core values. We want our identity to be strong and intact. We want to have a concept of ourself that is very, very strong. And that is the type of work that I do with people, because if you have all that stuff in alignment, then the work that you're doing feels like freedom. And then that discipline that you have, it leads to your freedom. And then you can start to create the lifestyle that you actually want to live without feeling like you're wearing golden handcuffs and living in a golden cage.